Good morning, everyone. Very honored to be here in my new role as head of Fox International Productions and to talk to you about local language productions around the world. But since this is a movie convention, I thought we'd kick off with some moving images instead. So can you please roll the reel first? So the biggest success of 2015 in Argentina for 20th Century Fox was not The Martian, and it wasn't Home, or Maze Runner, Scorched Trial, or it wasn't Taken 3. It was the local film, it's a thriller called El Clan, or The Clan in English, which is based on a true story set against a very violent and turbulent era in Argentina in its near history. And this dark and masterful thriller went on to not only be the biggest film of the year for Fox, it became the second biggest local film of all time in Argentina. Now that's just one example that proves that if you're not in the local movie business, you're not 100% in the movie business. Some of the great cinema of today, and it's always been, is being created in languages other than English. Now the success story in the international theatrical business over the last decade or so is celebrated and discussed at events such as CinemaCon every year. And it really is something to behold. You know, every once in a while there are doomsayers that will proclaim that the end is nigh for the theatrical business and no one wants to watch long-form film entertainment, especially not in something so old-fashioned as a movie theater. And every time these ideas are uttered, they are refuted. Movies are still the only mainstream form of entertainment and art that is truly larger than life. But if you dig a little bit deeper, and you see that the growth recently is mainly driven by emerging markets, and in particular by China. The more mature markets are pretty much following the path of the US market. And then if you dig even deeper, you see that the success in several markets around the globe is primarily driven by local movies. Please compare and contrast the strength in the 4 Asian markets at the top there, together with the more sort of mature European and Latin American markets below. And what you'll see is that local movies enjoy a very commanding position in the 4 largest Asian markets. Of course, it hasn't gone unnoticed to anyone that China has been growing at an astonishing rate. The total box office in 2015 was second only to the US globally, as the market grew by almost 50% from the year before. And it won't be long until the Chinese market becomes the biggest in the world. It may even be this year already that it becomes the biggest year in the world. And as you can see, and have seen, the growth is very much driven by local movies. Now, in 2015, only 3 of the top 10 films were Hollywood products. And the #1 movie of the year was Monster Hunt, which made $374 million at the Chinese box office. And it's a phenomenal success. You see the top 10 film here generated in China alone $147 million just in that market. And the first quarter of this year shows an even greater emphasis on local product. Again, the market grew by a bit over 50% actually. But now the local movie share has increased an incredible 88% of all the box office in the first 3 months. Now, this success was spearheaded by the mega hit The Mermaid, which amassed a spectacular $526 million in China alone. Now, that number would have made it the 6th biggest film of all time in the US. There you see the growth of the Chinese market. And then on to India. Now, the Indian market, as we all know, is tremendously productive. More films are produced in India than any other country in the world. And they have a cinema culture which has developed in parallel with the Hollywood and the Western style, which gives it a very unique characteristics. And also please note that when we talk about Bollywood, we're actually only referring to one regional and language style of movie. India is made up of a plethora of regions, cultures and languages, each with their own style of cinema. So if India is the largest producer of movies in the world, do you know who is number 2? Come on, what's the question? Well, it's Nigeria. Nigeria is the 2nd biggest producer of movies in the world. After that is the US, but hot on its heels is China. And depending on how you count the number of films produced in a country, China may actually produce more movies than Hollywood right now. And that's obviously set to increase. Here you can see 3 of the biggest hits of the last 2 months, and happy to say that 2 of these 3 films were released by our joint venture in India, Foxstar, which is enjoying a tremendously successful period at the moment. And all the US and other country movies are making even greater impact year on year on the Indian market. As you can see, local product still holds a very commanding position of 84%. And again, what we see in many of these markets, only 2 of the top 10 films released last year in India were from Hollywood. You can see it was Fast and Furious and Jurassic World. All the other 8 films were local product. Now the UK, why would we include UK when we cover local language movies? Well, obviously, British English is very different from American English, first of all, but and if you've been there, you can't understand what they say half the time. But the UK is a market which produces both movies for global audiences, as we know, things like Spectre, and of course the Harry Potter films, and just to name a few. But it also has very strong and very local fare that can still generate stratospheric box office returns. Just look at these 2 films to the left there. In-Betweeners and In-Betweeners 2, they're made $73 and $56 million each. Most of that money coming out of the UK, but these films also travel a little bit. They actually made some money in Australia, New Zealand, and some in Europe as well. But they're very local films that still do phenomenal business just in the UK. Now here's a country that's not referred to much when discussing international movies. unless we talk about a film like the Oscar-nominated Mustang. But Turkey sits in a very interesting position between Europe and Asia. And it's a market that consumes a lot of Hollywood product. Our films do very well there, but those films can't even begin to compare with the huge success of the local films. And again, similar to India and what we've seen from China, only 2 Hollywood films made it into the top 10 of 2015. That was Avengers and Fast and Furious. But local language films are not confined to geographical or language borders. If you look at the phenomenal success that was in Intouchables, or is it Intouchables? I don't know, probably both. Now this doesn't happen often, right? But when it does, it truly shows the universal strength of movies that can touch and entertain people no matter where you live and no matter what language you speak. This film made more than $400 million internationally or globally. Just a phenomenal number, even $10 million in the US alone. And you see some of the numbers here, $79 million in Germany, 21 million in Spain. You see that local language films are not confined to the local market alone. Now, as I said, it doesn't happen often, but there's a great potential for these films to break out. Now, the Indian diaspora always ensures that Indian movies generate important revenue beyond the Indian continent. And the first film from the Fox Star studio that was released in India and worldwide was My Name is Khan. And I think that set the gold standard for the global appeal of Indian movies. It did $47 million internationally. And here you can see the international revenue split, or the global revenue split of a recent film, PK, and how that was split up around the world. Most of the money, obviously, 68% coming out of India, but that still leaves 32% of the revenue coming from outside of India. Mainly in diaspora, mainly an Indian audience, but there's some feeling that there's a growth of a general audience as well to see Indian movies. Now this is even true sometimes with films with very strong patriotic and nationalistic themes. They can still generate success outside the home country. Here's an example, is Korea's The Admiral. Obviously a massive hit in Korea, $133 million in Korea. It's the biggest film of all time. But you see that actually made some money even in the US, and even some decent money in China as well. And that's a film that is very specifically targeting the Korean audiences. And Korean films actually do really well in places like France as well. And we've had some great success with the films that we've produced in France, and hoping to replicate that with a film coming out in May. Now, the rest of the world revenue outside of China was $22 million. And of course, it's dwarfed by the staggering $525 million The Mermaid generated in China. But it is a glimpse of the potential for world cinema, or how movies around the world can actually start crossing cultural borders. Not easy, not at all, it happens very seldom, but there is an opportunity there. So just a little bit to see how Fox fits into this one, and what we do obviously is done by most, if not all, of our studio competitors in the US as well. Well, Fox International launched in 2008, and as I said, it's actually now 1.1 billion in box office revenue since we started, since inception. And the whole idea with FIB, or Fox International Productions, was to build upon the industry-leading activities of Fox International. And what we do is that we produce, but we also acquire movies in several key markets around the world, including, of course, China, as I mentioned. Here you can see some of the successful releases that we've had since 2010. But to see the difference between then, this is what happened in the last 6 years. Right now, we are actively developing 6 projects with our partners in China, which includes some US-Chinese co-productions, also a UK-Chinese co-production. And we're also planning several more European-Chinese co-productions to take advantage of treaties and, of course, amazing filmmaking talent. Now in India, where we have a joint venture with Star TV, we've had a fantastic start to 2016, and is building on an already formidable success that we acquired in India. We're also very active in Korea. We'll release 3 films, and we'll release the very highly anticipated thriller Goksun in May. Again, a film that we think have a chance to play outside of the Korean borders as well. And we've also been successful sort of beating them at their own game in Japan, where we've had big hits with the anime movies Dragon Ball 1 and 2 that we co-produced, and of course were big hits in Japan, and not just in Japan, there were big hits around the world, especially in Latin America. And I think we're going to see growth of this particular style of animated movie, the anime, the Japanese sort of created animation type of movie. The growth of that is phenomenal. It's a little bit hidden at the moment because it's mainly consumed the likes of Netflix and Crunchyroll in the US and Hulu and sort of digital distribution forms. But it is gaining popularity around the world, and I think we're going to see more and more films coming out of Japan, and it's an area we are going to be involved in as well. And in terms of real, true emerging markets, we're looking at Philippines and Vietnam as our next places we're looking to produce films. And also Indonesia, which is one of those sort of untold success stories. It actually grew by 38%, the business in Indonesia. And it's vastly under-screened Indonesia. As you may know, Indonesia is the fourth most populous country in the world. A huge audience that consume a lot of Hollywood film, and of course local films as well. And a very interesting arena for us to get into. Now, leading market in terms of output and success so far in Europe has been Germany. And you saw some examples of some of the films that we produced, and we're working to probably increase from the 2 films we do a year and release in Germany to probably 4 films a year in the near future. But we're also very active in Spain, and if you see in the growth of the local business in Spain, it's gone up to 20% now, because some of the biggest films each year are local Spanish fare that bring back an audience that may be lapsed into movie theaters. And it's going to become a very strong core market for us, as is Russia, where we have several projects being developed and looking into being acquired in a very interesting market for us. And also we're going to announce more films very soon from other markets in Europe, including Sweden, and guess why? And several projects in the UK. And the UK is becoming a core strategic market for us, and as you can see, the upside in the UK with local product is phenomenal, because it also has a chance to grow and do well outside of the UK. Now in Latin America, we've been mostly active in Brazil, where we've had multiple hits in the market over the course of many years. But we're also very active in Mexico. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on, where we're currently developing several projects. And of course, we will build on the success that we had with El Clan in Argentina. So we're working on some very creative and commercial projects. Now, we've also had some success in producing low-budget, high-concept, English-speaking genre pictures, where we utilize the FIP production model, where we find scripts, ideas, talent, and filmmaker, and we put together them and model them, and we shoot them and produce them and create them outside of the US and outside the Hollywood system by using international filmmakers and location. And what we think when we're doing that is creating something unique, because it's created outside the studios. And if you look at the result of these films, they've done incredibly well for us. So, FIP, what do we do, and what do our other colleagues and competitors in the other studios do? Well, we're focusing on producing and acquiring commercial films, first and foremost. We're not really in the local art house business. That's not our strength. Doesn't mean that we're not going for true talent and for quality. We are. That's the foundation of everything we're doing. And we are in partnership with some of the most creatively talented filmmakers working internationally today. And when we work with filmmakers internationally in local language as well, we also give them opportunities to work with our sister divisions within Fox, the Fox 2000, Big Fox and Fox Searchlight, to bring that talent over to Hollywood and make films truly for the global audience. Now, international movies are, as we know, as creative and exciting as Hollywood movies, but they have unique characteristics. And they inspire audiences in a different way, but they also inspire filmmakers. And they should inspire us all here as well to find audiences for them. Now, do local producers and creative filmmakers need us, Fox or any of the film studios, to be in the local marketplace? Well, probably not financially. But what we can bring, and what I think people want to have, is the Hollywood know-how. If you think about it, it's a sort of a 100-year-old business, and we've learned this the hard way for decades, how to do things. And it's technical expertise, not just in physical production and in post-production, but also in development and screenwriting, and of course, in marketing and distribution, where we have real strength in every market that we are. Now, some filmmakers, of course, want to work with studios in hope that the projects they have will get worldwide distribution. Well, will the films travel internationally, globally, just because we make them in the local market? Well, it depends. It actually depends on how good the film is at the end when it's finished. And we never designed them to travel, to actually work outside the country of origin. But we have seen again and again, of course, that quality movies, they can find a audience outside the core country, but we always decided that they have to make their money back and find an audience in the local market. And also, this is a question for debate, and I don't know the answer to this. Will all the new digital delivery methods out there, the SVODs and the EST ways to consume movies at home nowadays, such as Netflix and Hulu and iTunes, will they actually grow the interest and demand for global cinema? If you look at TV series, right? Narcos is a very good and very interesting example. Very successful Netflix series that's coming back with season 2. It was shot about 30 to 40% in Spanish and was released everywhere with subtitles, and that didn't stop the success. And of course, there's a much greater portfolio of international films available now, more than ever before the click of a button. Now, will this help and grow this interest theatrically? Or will this stick around? I don't know yet. But it's something we obviously want to do, that migrate that audience, that maybe whet their appetite by seeing and access to global films and international talent and movies that will bring them over to theaters is something we have to work on together. Now, as you can see, we're active in many markets around the world, some which may not have large commercial local film markets. One example of that is Mexico, which is one of our core markets for local production. Mainly because they have fantastic filmmaking talent, but only 5%, as you saw before, of the gross box office in 2015 was made up by local fare. But we have a great and very successful operation in Mexico, and that's a true example of where I think US studio involvement and investment in local production can actually grow that sector of the market and bring filmmakers and talent to a much wider audience than is the case right now. And that's not just for Mexico. We focus our efforts in countries where we have strong infrastructure. But we also focus on countries where we can find some of the most exciting and creative filmmakers of today. That includes Korea and Russia. Now, the audience for local hits doesn't always overlap with Hollywood movie audiences. They're complementary businesses and industries. They're not competing ones. When audiences turn out en masse to see local hits, you often capture and entice local audience and lapsed moviegoers, people that may not go frequently to movie theaters anymore, but you reintroduce them to the premier film entertainment format, which is the theatrical experience. That is why we're in this business. It competes and it completes the offerings for audience around the world, and it also infuses inspiration, creative and business-wise, for our organization. A healthy local industry ensures a healthy global industry. Since movies are storytelling, artistry, craftsmanship merged with technology, and the advances in the latter arena means that we will see global blockbusters emerge from the minds and hearts of filmmakers everywhere, from Korea to Mexico, Brazil to Spain, Germany to Indonesia, China to possibly Nigeria one day. Now, we're telling local stories, but we do that with a global approach. I want to thank the Hall Fox team here for the support, and of course our exhibition partners globally. Again, local business ensures a very healthy global business. Thank you very much.